are listening to Left, Right, Center podcast on Spotify.
Welcome to
Left.
Right.
Center.
How come I always get right?
We didn't choose this time. We just went with it. So you'll be right
Next
today.
time, Walid, I'm going to be left.
All right. So our very first episode, our topic will be on thought leadership.
Yeah, and with us we have a very special guest, probably the most well-known Malay Muslim in Singapore. We have Professor Yaacob Ibrahim. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah.
For the record, I was also the guinea pig for his.
Yes, I was gonna say that
Teh
as
tarik
well.
Walid. I was the first one.
Okay.
Not sure why that's happening to me, but never mind. We'll go with the flow.
Because we want authentic discussion. You know, we don't want curated one. People prepare speeches. And I know you are someone who can actually give a lot of insights because, I mean, people need to have some level of thinking before they can actually be clear in their messaging, right? So, and since we are talking about thought leadership, maybe I'll start by asking you, Prof, do you think thought leadership is really, really important, or we just do the work that needs to be done? Yeah?
I think you need some ideas, you need some vision, you need some sense of where you're heading, what is your destination, what is your journey, how that destination and journey is shaped by some of the key ideas that you may have, right? Depending on your context, let's say in Singapore, we talk about multiracialism, we talk about being a multi-religious society. As a community, for example, or minority or otherwise, where is it that you're heading within that context? You need some clear ideas, you need some clear direction.
Yeah, but everyone will have their own set of ideas, right?
That's true.
So there will be a lot of ideas, and people nowadays think because of, information is at their fingertip, they think they are entitled to make their own decisions, think their own way, and they can decide on their own what is good for society.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, how does this work out in a democratic society where so many people have different ways and vision? Is it just easy to just follow whoever is in power and tell us what to do, what problems to solve? Should that be the way, or do we develop autonomously our own vision?
I think it should not be the way. I think there must be some kind of a marketplace of ideas where people can come together and discuss. I think leaders will put forward what they think is important, but I think there must be a response from the people who are basically, at a different level to be able to say, I agree or I disagree. I think that conversation must take place. If you just listen to the leader and follow, see what's happening in the US, right? I think you need to be able to have that conversation. And I think the most important thing is that the conversation must be a civil discourse where people respect ideas and people agree to disagree. I think that is very important for us to move forward. You asked about the fact that there's so many people claiming that they have the authority to do so. I've always believed that, I don't really believe in the market economy, but I believe that the market will sort out. People will see what is more authentic. Who are the people who really have those ideas? And I think the key point I've always believed is consistency. Is it a position that you're stuck all your life because you believe so and you try to defend it and therefore you know that the person is authentic? Or is it because you follow with the wind? Today I'll go with the left, I go to the right because that's the fashionable thing to do. Once you have something like that, then I think people will see for what it is worth. So what you need is a discerning public. And the discerning public can only come through education, obviously, awareness. And again, as I say, participation in that marketplace of ideas. I think you must have that discourse where people can come, agree to disagree, then we move forward after that. Right? I think that's very important. Yeah.
So, Prof, how do you have that marketplace of ideas where it seems like a lot of things are restricted? There are a lot of impositions, right, which are market distortions. Like you have POFMA, you have all sorts of controls, which may be well intended, but it still results in self-censorship. So how do you have that marketplace of ideas? And without that, isn't the natural thing just the PAP, the government becomes the ultimate thought leaders?
Sure. I think that's not healthy for Singapore over the longer term. You really need alternative centers where people can actually have a discourse. I think POFMA and all the regulations that are put in place really for the government to see what best I can do to construct a safe space so that you don't cross some red lines. We can discuss what those red lines are. We can also discuss when you cross the red lines, what happened, right? But we all agree that we cannot promote hate speech. We all agree we cannot promote divisive politics in Singapore.
Or disinformation even.
Or disinformation, exactly. So I think if we are clear about all those things, I think POFMA is not going to be too restrictive, right? Unless you really want to champion something that you believe strongly and it crosses certain red lines, I think you need to perhaps have a private conversation rather than a public conversation. I mean, let's take the issue of religious differences, right? We know there are differences basically. So as I mentioned to some groups I met recently, I said the purpose in Singapore is not to harmonize religion. The purpose in Singapore is to make sure that religions can coexist with those differences basically. And the only way that can do that is to discuss those differences. Maybe not openly, not in public, but within small groups so that at least you can appreciate each other.
But Prof, I mean, I've heard this argument that there's a chilling effect. People are scared to discuss certain issues because of certain laws in place.
Sure.
So they self-regulate, they self-censor.
Yeah.
But actually, I think times have changed. I see a lot of young people
Exactly.
and online, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Take the issue of Gaza, for
Yes.
example. People say that we can't talk about these issues, but there are thousands of people discussing about the situation on Instagram, for example.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'm trying to grapple, is there really a chilling effect or is just something
You
that,
don't think that people self-censor in Singapore?
I don't think so.
I think it depends on certain
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah.
Certain issues that are extra sensitive, people may think twice before they want to say something.
Which is good.
Which is good because it holds back, because otherwise you open the floodgates too big,
Exactly.
right? And then
Exactly.
you find it's difficult to claw back on
Exactly.
certain,
Exactly.
the Malay saying terlajak, Prof help me.
Perahu.
Perahu boleh
Diundur.
diundur, terlajak kata buruk padahnya kan.
Wish.
Oi.
Wow.
You're on my level.
Yeah. So
That's why you're on the right, That conservative views.
He's on the left. He's on the left. He's on the left.
I'm on Yuli's left, So I want to know also the young people, right? I mean,
Yeah.
what is the situation now? I mean, we are like I'm conscious of our generation.
I mean, it's very obvious that social media has democratized, I think,
Yes.
civil conversation. So youth definitely feel a lot more empowered to say their thoughts.
Yeah.
But I think the transition to the offline world, right, when they want to take action, I think that's where all these red tapes and POFMA and all that, that's where I think maybe youths, what I'm trying to understand if these rules and regulations even apply to the youth anymore, if they're even scared of it anymore, right? And I would give perhaps an extreme example of Transformative Justice Collective. Then they were served POFMA, and to them they're kind of overriding that ruling and saying, okay, whatever, we'll just operate in a different name.
Sure.
So yeah, I'm just wondering with the new generation, it does seem like there's a burning desire to say
How
their
many
perspectives.
TJCs are there?
Right.
How isn't the fact that you can mention TJC as an example shows that it's in the minority, right? If the culture of self-censorship is no longer there, TJC wouldn't even stand out as an example, right?
No, but to your question about young people, my honest opinion is you need to try, and until you try, you will know where the lines are, right? I think if you remain too circumscribed because you fear, then you'll never move forward. All right. I mean, during
I
my
think we
time,
got our viral clip. Prof. Yaacob says young people should test the boundaries.
no, during my time, it was about national service, right? We were concerned about the fact that Malay boys were not called upon. So when I arrived in campus in 1976, so you know how old I am, there were already young Malay activists who have gone to see the Minister for Defence, Dr. Goh Kingsway at that time, to ask why Malays were not called forward. I was a bit quiet at that time. I realized that, hey, if they can do it, why can't I do it, right? Basically. And those issues were brought up. So we were active in the Muslim society to discuss social issues concerning the Malay Muslim community. So I think it's a matter of basically testing the waters, right? And if you know where the red lines are, then you know what to do. So in our time, at least during my time, we were able to have this honest discussion because we realized these are important issues for the community. Right?
But sometimes also like Walid, right? I mean, I do notice that within a certain activist circle, right? There is this tendency that we think that our position is absolutely correct and it's just a shouting game,
Yeah.
I just want to put my views out there.
Yeah.
So my concern is, where is that conversation and dialogue
That's right.
where we explore different perspectives that may even challenge our own initial position
That's right.
and make us rethink on certain things. I mean, I'm sure many of us have gone through that process where we think we are right. And then we think that, society must do this, or the government must do this, or I must do this.
Yeah.
And then eventually we feel that, actually by listening to alternative arguments and perspectives, maybe we need to temper down our sense of certainty on certain issues. I think that is what is missing right now, and I think that adds on to the polarization of society, where both sides are just interested in putting out their positions, asserting their truths, but nobody actually wants to examine their own truths. I think that is where I feel the problem is. What's your sense of that?
Yeah, I think there is that. I'm not sure whether that is the major problem facing Singapore based on civil discourse. I still think that the censorship thing is still something that still exists. Even during the elections, I still heard people saying, "Oh, I'm not going to vote for the opposition because voting is not secret." So we still hear that, right? So if we still hear that, that means there's some level of self-censorship.
Probably in a
still.
minority.
I agree. I think that is definitely decreasing. The voting is secret part is the most extreme part, but I think the censorship part the self-censorship does occur. I think still at a higher level than.
But I suppose that sense of censorship doesn't explain what.
Correct.
Imran
So
is
that's
trying
a
to say.
separate problem,
issue,
right? So the polarization part, I do think that. I think all of us have been subjects of it as well, right? That we were not brave enough or left enough or courageous enough or radical enough. I personally don't think that is super unhealthy as long as those people who are quote unquote more radical also are open to discussion.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right?
I agree.
Of course.
So it cannot be that you can think you are right and that's fine. And you can think that, yes, you cannot cooperate with the government in any way, but at least listen. You cannot be the first person who, you're sell out already, right? You are the one who is.
You've been accused of that, Walid?
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
Really?
Yes. Together with Yuli as well.
Okay. What incident was that?
So,
I'm just curious.
it is partly our scholarship thing that we have. We did.
Palestinian Scholarship,
Scholarship Initiative.
So partly that and partly our views on other forms of activism as well. But and that's something that we also discussed internally where we wanted to angle ourselves. So we are very well aware of this. And also on our part, I don't think we need to be too sensitive also.
It's always a negotiation.
No. Let's be honest about it. I think the government is prepared to listen to alternative views if you are able to back it up with, data, facts, research, whatever the case may be. Take, for example, some of the people in the Lee Kuan Yew School who I know for a fact have written articles which are critical of certain government policies, but nothing has happened to them, right? Because I think in a way, they do it in an academic setting to be able to provide at least some alternative views to what the government of the day is saying. So you bring it down to sort of the grassroots level, I think there's enough scope, but as long as you do it responsibly, as long as you do it with enough facts and data that you can back it up rather than just name calling. So your point about the fact that it become a shouting match is because they don't have facts and data. They're just shouting at each other to drown out each other, right? But if you're prepared to be open, as Walid mentioned, even the radical left or right, to listen to different views, you probably might convince yourself, maybe there's something there I have to think about. Right, basically.
But again, we are assuming, in society, people are like entirely rational. Right?
Of course.
I think many of these contentious issues, people react actually, firstly from emotions, right? People feel about a particular stand or issue and then they go by emotion and then they try to rationalize it or work out an argument backward, right? So I think that's the real issue. How can we actually acknowledge that these emotions, but at the same time direct those emotions towards re-examining the basis of some of our views. And that's not easy, bro.
It's not easy. It's not easy. I mean, all of us are set in certain ways, right? We do certain things, and when you're asked, you're not so sure why, because you're not thought about it, but you become defensive when someone challenges you. It's a fact. We are all gone through that. Thankfully, those are not fatal things. I mean, for example, how you pray like this, you pray like that, different ways, and people criticize you, right? But suddenly realize that those doesn't matter actually because they're not big things. But if they're big things about...
I don't know, for some people it really matters.
I agree. But for me, it doesn't matter. Right? Basically, I'm sure God is very forgiving that today I forgot to fold my hand, I will not go to hell. Right?
This is where Walid, he's a liberal.
No, I mean, okay, never mind. We don't go down that road. I'll come back to your point, basically. I think I agree with you. People do react with emotions because they feel under attack. Right? How come my view has been questioned, basically? And we've been there before, right? But as I said earlier, you just need to educate people and say, hey, it is okay.
Yeah. So the question is, since we are talking
Yeah.
about thought leadership, right? Who is doing the education?
I was gonna ask actually, who are the thought leaders? Let's say if we think about the
Okay.
Muslim community, right, the Malay community, who are the thought leaders? Is it supposed to be our MPs? But
No.
exactly, right? Because they are not elected. It could be them,
Yeah.
but it's not by virtue
Some
of
of
their
them
political.
can be.
Exactly.
Some of them can be.
Right,
If they want
right.
to play their role, by all means. Right? Nothing is to prevent them from doing so. So it has to be a group of people who are prepared to put forward ideas and views based on their own reflection, what they think is important, and then let there be a debate, right? So if you ask me whether there are some thought leaders, I think there are among the young. I mean, I've always believed that we used to have in the past, but that generation in a way has passed on.
Who are those in the past years?
I mean, this is very interesting. People forget Ridwan Dafi.
right.
Part one was a civil servant.
Yes.
Even though he was a civil servant, he had views.
Yes.
He had comments. I remember when I first became a minister, he sent me a letter stating what his views are about the Malay community's problems and challenges, and he hoped that I will pay attention to this problem, basically, right? And I read the letter. I still have it somewhere in my archives. It's actually a very reflective piece, which means that he's not just an innocent bystander, civil servant doing his job, but he's observing the community. He knows what's going on, and he shared that. And I used to remember one conversation. This was with AMP in the early days, and they invited him to have a conversation, and I won't mention who's on the AMP side, but this time you can guess. So they were talking and all the stuff. Then when he was about to talk, they interjected. Then he says, I allow you to speak. Why don't you allow me to speak, basically, right? So the adab of having a conversation, I still remember that story. So what it means is he listens. He listens to what you're trying, and he's trying to react, right? But before he could react, of course, somebody from the other side interjected, which I think he felt a bit upset with that. But I think part one was such a character that you could look to him and ask him questions, basically, right?
Yeah.
Even though he was a civil servant, he was still active in the community. He was supporting community efforts, basically. I mean, he was instrumental behind Mendaki and Muiz and so on and so forth. So I thought we miss such a character. And of course, from the academia, the late Professor Syed Hussein Alatasa, who provide very independent thought, which I thought was very useful for the community. We used to have Professor Shahruddin Ma'ruf doing it, but he has migrated, went back to his hometown, basically. So I think we need more of such characters to be able to come forward and put up those pieces. I read the New York Times. I don't know whether that's the right thing to say or wrong thing to say, basically, right? But we subscribe to it because we thought because they have very good opinion pieces.
Yes.
Yeah,
These are people who write 400-500 words article, but when you read it, you say, wow, there's something inside this what this person is saying. And we're missing that in the community.
I think you're talking about AMP, sorry. You mentioned that, and the first time I interacted with AMP was at their convention. I think that was 2022.
The second convention.
Yeah. And I think Walid was telling me that, AMP has an illustrious history, and I did not know all this, right? And after doing more research, and now I actually work with AMP doing their social media content and so on, and I realized that AMP was born out of 500 Muslim professionals coming together organically. And as a young activist, I was shocked. I did not know this.
No kidding.
Yeah, no kidding. And I'm wondering, why do we not know these stories? What happened along the way, and where have all of these people gone?
Well, that's why now people are saying there's no 700 years history of Singapore. Right?
Right.
Oh my
So I think we need to educate everyone about not just history of Singapore, but history of the community. And people need to know all that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What we have today is not something that was cast in stone. It was through years and years of struggle and basically pushing for the boundaries so that the Malay community can do better, right? So I think that story has to be told somehow. I was looking forward for AMP to do that job. I'll be honest about it. They had Rima. They had very serious people in the early years, basically. In fact, I told the leadership, I think you need to revive that. You need to revive that so that at least there's a platform, right, that people can sort of put out their ideas and put up their suggestion, and they are prepared to publish it.
But this is where I notice maybe, is the context that have changed, right? I mean, people started out with a vision, with some ideas or problems that they see in society, and they want to fix that, right? And then they come together and they develop something. They form an organization, and then eventually they get sucked into the whole bureaucratic thing. And like Singapore's success, we are actually victims of our own success in the sense that the earlier generation, they were thinking about problems because there are real problems that needs to be solved.
Yes.
But eventually we become a very technocratic society.
Yes.
We have become so efficient that we use less of our thinking and we fail to see problems around us. Or even if we see problems, we know that, okay, it'll be fixed by someone who has the means to know the resources and who are in certain positions.
Sure.
So we just abdicate our responsibility to resolve issues that we see has problems around us.
I don't know whether that's the case or it's the opposite, because now everybody is an activist. They don't need AMP. They don't need the tradition.
Yeah,
In
I'm
fact,
not saying that also. Yeah.
In fact, I think there is a real danger in the next 15 to 20 years. Most except maybe 4 or 5 Muslim organizations will be completely irrelevant, obsolete, right? Can think of Muiz and Mendaki will always be relevant for particular reasons, but the rest, they have to fight for their relevance, right? Today in 2025, would the Muslim community really lose out if Jamia no longer existed? Honest question, right? In terms thought leadership, maybe you can think about their welfare stuff that they do, but in terms of thought leadership, Jamia was at the forefront of those debates.
Exactly. In the early days.
Muhammadiyah was at
in the early days.
They
Exactly.
don't do that anymore,
They
right?
don't.
So I was thinking also someone like you actually is in prime position to be like a thought leader, right? Like your engineering background, but also Hussein Alatas one, and I'm thinking even someone like Cik Zainul Abidin, you know. But do you think you're a bit tainted by politics such that you could never, or could you, do you think, fulfill that role?
I think it depends on what you mean and what you expect me or people who've been in politics to play that role. You look at Western society, for example. Okay, Robert Wright. Robert Wright was a Labour secretary for Clinton era, right? Or Clinton or Obama, I think Clinton. Today he has a podcast giving his ideas and his views about what's wrong with American society, what's wrong with Trump, and so on and so forth. Then there's nothing wrong if you want to do that, right? Basically. But as I said earlier, it cannot because you feel that, okay, there's something wrong, but you have no facts. I think it's possible for even a former politician to come out and say, hey, these are my views on the matter, basically, right? But you have to live with the consequences, right? I mean, that's, I think it's a fact of life, right? I mean, I won't go down the road what I did.
But I just want to respond to Walid's point. I think that precisely speaks about what I mentioned earlier, that people react first based on their certain predisposed ideas or emotions, right? For example, if you started out I don't like the government. So anyone who is associated with the government, for example, a minister level, then they see as being tainted. And therefore, whatever that person say, they will reject first, right? So I think this is where society needs to learn to actually look at the argument itself. I mean, for me, when I look at you, Prof, I look at, okay, what's the proposition that you have? What's the idea that you have? Rather than seeing you as a former minister first, I want to see what are your ideas. What are the problems that you see and whether it resonates with me. Society needs to be guided towards that rather than, just putting people into boxes and then we are just reacting to what they say based on those boxes.
It's not an unimportant part also of his identity, right?
Yeah, of course. I'm not saying that.
So it's not that we can just
But he has no
it.
impact on the argument, I'm saying.
I agree with
exactly.
that. I agree with that. It has
right?
no...
So, I mean, I have a position on Gaza. I have made it known. I made it public, right? And as far as I'm concerned, it's not too far off from what the government is saying, but at least I'm a bit more definitive. So the scholarship idea is something that we supported because we feel that we want to do something about it, right? I don't think I've crossed any red lines, but I do agree that I wish more could be done about what is going on in Gaza by our own government. And I think they are looking into it, and they have mentioned that they may have violated certain international humanitarian laws and so on and so forth, and something needs to be done. So I hope something can be done in that direction.
What would your advice? Because I agree with you, and I think the government actually done a pretty decent job in managing, because foreign policy is quite difficult
Very
to change,
complex,
right?
yes.
But what would the Minister of Muslim Affairs could have done better, or could do now that Faisal is in the early years, early days? What do you think? Because it seemed to me that Gaza really affected a lot of relationships throughout the world between Muslim communities and their leaders. And I saw that here as
Yeah.
well. I think,
Yeah.
and it was manifested
Yeah.
in the election,
Yeah.
specifically with Masagos, not the
Sure.
the entire party, but specifically with him. But what do you think?
No, I think you have to acknowledge this is a humanitarian crisis. You have to acknowledge that something that's happening in Gaza in which nobody in his sane mind can accept, right? I think that is something which the minister has to state categorically, that this is wrong, it should not have happened. How can you use starvation as a weapon, right? Which is, I think, is a lot of people have condemned that. I think that statement has to come out very clearly. And I think in some ways they are saying those things basically. And I think that is very important. So I rather not make this a Muslim issue or a non-Muslim
Yeah,
issue, but it's a humanitarian issue. And if you don't have that sense of humanity, then there's something wrong with you, right?
Yeah.
That you allow people to die and starve when the food is available just across over there. So I think that is something which we want to hear more lah, to be able to say that this is really a humanitarian crisis and the world, including Singapore, has to act on this.
Yeah, I think we had this conversation earlier. I think the issue of Gaza is one of the topics that we want to delve into specifically in subsequent podcasts. But I just want to cycle back to this whole idea of thought leadership, right? It's also about a leadership that actually look at a variety of issues that needs to be addressed in society. And actually the selection of the issues also matters.
Very important.
Right?
Yes.
So what kind of issues do we decide to give prominence to? What kind of issues we are silent about or absent even in our thinking? So I think that is where someone who plays the role of thought leadership has to discern that out. Because otherwise it just become my favorite pet topic,
That's
right?
right.
If
Exactly.
I'm interested in an issue A and then I bring it out and I rally the whole community towards it, and then suddenly what is personal to me becomes very public. And we don't want that also, because some people do have a vested interest in bringing out their personal issues to become a public issue. So thought leadership is also about saying whether these are really issues that affect and where are spaces where, for example, we discuss issues that are really affecting the Malay Muslim community in terms of the gig economy and how it's going to affect the development of Malay society, Malay Muslim community in the next 5-10 years. You know, platform delivery, Grab delivery riders, and all the social safety net that is absent. So these kind of issues are not being talked about. But sometimes we are like what you say lah, tangan kat mana, you know, time solat and all that. You know, we become dragged into very minute issues. And sometimes some of these issues are being peddled by people who are very influential in society, and that's where my worry comes from.
Is there an example of a small issue getting over?
I mean, like for example, you know, like issue like whether this stall is halal cert and on all that. People get riled up. People get riled up because of the effect of social media, right? And then it's being, you know, viralized. You can see the community is being focused on certain issues that, and they jump from issues to issues because of this virality and things that can be easily shared through WhatsApp and all that, right? But where is the conscious effort to actually channel those energy towards issues that really have long-term implications for the community? And that's where I feel we really need to discuss about the absence of thought leadership.
I agree. I totally agree. I mean, we know we still have a social problem, right? We have a drug problem. We still have people who are not having permanent housing, right? And we are among the highest in terms of rental housing. So I think those are the issues that need to be discussed. I mean, I remembered very clearly that the previous minister mentioned that this is something which the PAP Malay MPs are tackling, right? I'd like to have an update on that and have a discussion. How do we ensure that Malay home ownership can increase? Because we know that home ownership leads to stability and so on and so forth, children's education, right? So you're right. I think these are the kinds of issues that need to be discussed that have a long-term effect on the community, basically.
Because if we don't tackle these very basic socio-economic issues, it gets translated into other issues. And look what is happening in America, for example, when the low working class, you know, they are moved into a certain direction and people play up identity politics in order to become savior for this working class who you know, they don't even benefit from whatever decisions that they make that is being held by politicians, right? So I think that is where we have to be very careful about the selection of issues also and who is bringing certain issues
Exactly.
into the public arena.
So who should be the ones who are doing this?
Whoever were the
Yeah.
thought leaders in the community. I think it's important for people who recognize these are issues and to bring it forward. We don't have that, unfortunately. People writing about such issues. I mean, you mentioned about the impact on the gig economy. I think the larger issue is the impact of inequality
Yeah.
on the Malay Muslim community because we are at the lower rungs of society and how that divide is affecting us and our ability to come out, right? To transit. 60 years ago, we were all poor. So it was easy for us to. Now the society is different, it's a bit more stratified. So the question is therefore, what is being done to ensure that we can close the gap as quickly as possible? Of course, there are government efforts, but I think something needs to be analysed at the community level, right? If you remain in a gig economy, you are going to be affected by this really dividing, this increased income gap that's happening. That's inevitable because Singapore is growing, and we want to be able to make sure that we have high wages and people with high net income can come to Singapore, right?
Yeah.
And if we don't get the community moving forward, then I think we're going to have a long-term problem.
Yeah, and sorry, Walid. Like you ask who, right?
Yeah.
I think to me the question should not matter. Anyone with who sees a problem and feels a concern for it should be able and have the right to speak and raise those issues, right? So I think the problem is when we think that the responsibility lies with institutions or based on certain position. Yes, of course, I agree that people who are in leadership position, who hold formal leadership position, do have a greater responsibility because they have in their command, resources, and they have the ears of policymakers and all that. But I think we should not rely on positions and institutions. Like we can't say that, this problem, this organization must solve it for us. I think we have to take up that responsibility ourselves. Every individual who feels there's a problem, they should be able to contribute.
But just now you said that we need to be worried of people who use their personal. So clearly
Of
it
course.
matters who says as well.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
that seems to be a little bit of contradiction.
I don't
in
think
what
there's
you
a
said.
contradiction.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is basically, yes, there will be individuals who will bring their personal interest into the public space, but it's for others to check upon it and,
Yeah, of
and,
course.
and,
So then it
and show
matters
it.
who are the thought leaders, right? So it's not that it doesn't matter.
But
So-
I disagree that organizations can't do it. I mean, I would love for RIMA to revive that old spirit and start that process all over again, right? Because it was something that was created by my generation of Muslim leaders from the university, seeing that there is a need for us to be able to have that space to have an honest discussion about the problem facing the community. For Yuli's benefit, this was discussed when we were in campus, by the way. The idea of AMP was actually discussed in campus.
70s.
In the 70s,
Wow.
yes, basically, right? And then it just came about. And of course, the impetus was because of the tuition tertiary fee subsidy, TTFS, and Allahyarham Young Razali and company decided to move, right? So I think it's good that we try and find a way to revive some of these institutions that were designed for that. And as you rightly pointed out, we need the right individuals to come in to be able to help and navigate this, basically. And there could be, people who are out there who are on their own, who are solo, who actually have an interest. I mean, I'm also looking to the academic community. Why is it that we have not seen academics?
I must look at to
I know, I was about
You're
to
right.
turn, I was about to turn this side, right? Basically, right? Ami has done an article on Gaza, which is good on the Palestine. But I think more needs to be done in this area, and people who are in academia also need to contribute to that conversation.
And if organizations were to play that role, then I
Yes.
think organizations also must think on how they can be more inclusive.
Exactly. Yeah,
So people with different ideas who
Yes.
can contribute to that whole
Yeah.
problem solving,
Yeah.
they should be welcome.
Precisely.
So
Yeah.
organizations that are more inclusive, I think, can play that role.
Definitely. I would welcome that, basically.
Yeah. Lepak conversation seems to be moving in that direction.
Yeah. 2 points I wanted to expand
Sure.
on. One on academia, right? And I think in my work with Lepak Conversations, we realized there's a very real gap on literature and research on the Malay Muslim community. And so as a volunteer organization, we take it upon ourselves to look at diverse social issues, right? When people ask, what does Lepak Conversations do? I said, we look at issues broadly. Because I think there's a lot of issues that we still have to look into the community, from mental health to housing and so on. So I think I would really urge people in academia to do more research on the Malay Muslim community. And I think this question of who is also very important because it's, is it those Malay Muslims in academia? Are they the ones who have to do the research? But I point to Dr. Vivian Wee. I found out she's been doing research on the Orang Laut, Orang Selat community since the 1980s.
Yes.
So why was it okay for a non-Malay Muslim to do research on the community back then, but not now? And this is moving on to the second point, which is something that I've been saying, especially during GE, which is to open the conversation about Malay Muslim issues beyond the community. I really think that the community is still so, I guess, stuck with the day-to-day of surviving, of uplifting ourselves, that we probably don't have the energy or the space to have thought leaders, right? We don't have the time to sit and think about things and think about how to strategize and how to get our voices heard. There are so many hurdles that we have to get over. So I think for Lepak Conversations, I think that's why we turn to social media as an avenue, because everyone can access it, and our key aim is really to also simplify all of these issues, right? Because I think I think sometimes when I meet ministers, they always say, oh, we need to have a logical conversation. When you're emotional, we cannot speak. But like Imran said, often we speak out of emotions because we feel so strongly for these issues. And I think a lot of change happens when people are very emotional, right? Take the gig workers, for example. It's when a whole group of them came together and lobbied together that some policy change actually happened. So I think there needs to be room for different kinds of pushing for issues.
I don't want to use the word umbrage, but
Wow, I haven't heard that word in a while.
Only one person can use it.
no, I think the point is that there is enough people out there who can do this job if they are interested in it. Because we have a growing class of Malay middle class.
Right.
We have the professional networks that Mendaki have set up,
Right.
So why can't some of these networks be utilized in that way to provoke conversation and discussion? I mean, I met one of them, one group, because through my former...
Is this informal group?
They are an informal group but organized under Mendaki basically, and they came together. So they asked me whether I'm prepared to have a conversation with them, which I did. And through that conversation, I opened up a couple of sort of discussion avenues for them to think about, including the past, what has happened in the 70s and so on and so forth. And, by and large, I think this is the kind of engagement that you need, because there are people out there who may not have come across, like you never heard about AMP was an idea that was started way back in the 70s, not because of anything else, just because you didn't have the information available to you. So I think that contact between people who have been in the foray together with this emerging middle class must happen. So I've been bugging Imran for set up a conversation group so that we can have a discussion about some of these issues. Not because, we are old and about to die and we need to pass on our wisdom, but I think we want to share. We want to be able to get fresh ideas into some of these issues that we are facing. And I think we need to tap on this growing body of Malay middle class professionals especially.
Yeah.
Presumably they have the capability because they have gone to university and so on and so forth. It doesn't mean those who have not gone can't do it, but you have to start with something.
I don't know, Prof. My experience is people who are from universities, normally they are not interested. I'm not sure why.
No. Okay, interest is a different matter. I think capacity is another matter, but I think you can always provoke that interest. You can always start that conversation. Hopefully they realize, this is something maybe I need to think about, right? Maybe they have not been informed. Maybe the word has not reached to them, basically, right? And we need to do some kind of outreach to make sure that they understand that these are the kinds of issues we need to be talking about, right? They are Malay middle class. They don't realize they are poor Malays. If they don't, then we're in trouble. They don't realize that Malays at the bottom struggling, then we need to inform them that it's quite a significant number and something needs to be done. I'm not asking you to donate out of your pocket, but can you sit down with a group and think about what are the things that need to be done? I would like to see that happening among the younger Malay professionals here in Singapore.
Yeah, but I think there are two things. One is privilege.
That's right.
Sometimes, people who are in certain privileged position, they have it quite smooth in their life, especially if you're middle class and all that. Second is ideology. Ideology in the sense that if you think that, all it needs is for you to work hard.
Exactly.
And then you can succeed. And they succeed and they think that it's because of their own personal effort. The tendency is for them to look down on others.
That's true.
As you are lazy. That's why you are not successful as me. And they don't think in terms of their privilege and the kind of resources that they have, the starting point that they have.
That's true.
I think that is where this kind of conversations is missing. We tend to individualize problems and successes, but we don't look at the structural dimension of it.
No, we talk about these conversations missing. Is the conversation really missing, since this is what inequality looks like was published. Is that conversation really missing? So there is a
I think it's
national
missing.
conversation on inequality, I think, where meritocracy is no longer as strong, as coherent and ideological as it was just 10 years ago, I think. Now I think the default is to be critical of meritocracy a bit, right? But then maybe what is missing specific to the Malay community. But then the question is, would the hypothetical I put forth to the three of you is, if Teo Yo Yen was Siti Aisyah Rahim, right? Would the book have been as popular? And not the same contents. Maybe the same contents, yes. But Siti Aisyah Rahim, and then looking at inequality through a racial lens. Well, actually, we had one, right? And that was Lily Zubaida's book long ago, and it didn't get that. So I guess the tension is always, and I think, Malay political leaders always have to navigate this tension, right? When does an issue remains national? When do you make it a community one? When does it become counterproductive? Right? Because I think the inequality issue actually is best tackled without mentioning race.
I agree, and I don't think Teo Yo Yen did that.
Yes, exactly.
And the book was very different in that sense. She was looking at the national level, looking at all the problems of implementation in terms of how you transfer some of those things that you want to transfer to a low-income family, and recognizing it has nothing to do with race. As Imran said, there are structural problems, right? I mean, obviously, for some people in government, they cannot accept that. So recognizing that we have not been perfect in terms of reaching to the low-income families, I just hope that people who are in power realize that they need to improve and do better, right? But I think Imran has a point. I agree with you that if you continue with this ideology, it only work hard and everything will be all right. It works 40 years ago, like as I say, we were all poor, right? But today is very different. As you rightly pointed out, Malay, Muslim families, middle class can pass those advantages to their children and they ride smoothly in life without recognizing there are people who are struggling. So the question comes back again about education. How do you basically expose? So I think reaching out to these groups become important now, more so than before, because you need to tell them that there are real problems facing the community, and you do have a position where you can actually do something about it because you are in a privileged position, right? How you put that point across, I think, is very important. So I'm more than happy to engage the young people, right, so that they understand that there are issues in which we need to pull our resources together and tackle it, and they are an important part of the equation. You can't rely on my generation anymore, I mean, we're going to leave the scene sooner or later, but I think there are young people coming up, who has a lot more in terms of the resources that they have to themselves, and they can do a lot more if they come together.
No, hang on, Prof. Because I don't think your generation has nothing to contribute anymore.
No.
I think,
No, we still have something to contribute, basically, but we need to prepare the next generation.
Exactly. Because that intergenerational transference of knowledge is very important.
Very important,
so that the younger generation also, generation like Yuli and others, they can actually understand what has been done or tested in the past, what has worked, what has not worked, so they don't have to reinvent certain ways. And also, of course, the younger generation will know their context better than the previous generation. So they know how to negotiate better. They know how to navigate better. And sometimes I feel that is what is needed. That kind of intergenerational way of looking at problems and trying to resolve it. Rather than this, the previous generation has nothing to teach us. They are part of the problem, and I'm not going to talk to them. I'm just going to do things on my own.
Exactly.
So I have a problem with that kind of approach. But at the same time, the older generation also cannot poo-poo the younger generation.
And nor should we romanticize the past.
Exactly. Or we had it better in the past.
I can't stand it.
I disagree with the poo-poo. I want a poo-poo on that. But Imran is absolutely right. I think sometimes we also
You're not supposed to agree with me on this podcast.
on this. So sometimes we worship youth too much, and I thought we were the culture that valued wisdom. I think the natives had a say, what old people, young people walk fast, but old people know the road. And I think the battle scars of older people, just now Yuli, you said you didn't know about AMPs. To be honest, that saddened me a bit. And you are not nobody, right? You are an activist, and AMP was such an important part of Muslim Singaporeans activism, right? An important episode in that whole. And if younger activists don't know that, then I mean, partly I put it on AMP also, they haven't done a good job of
Yeah.
marketing probably, but
Yeah.
also partly on younger activists as well. But maybe we are all in this generational silos. Right?
So do you know how Mendaki came about?
Are you testing us now?
I'm asking you, Lee. You know how we come.
You would know the answer better.
Thank you. I was there. I was at the convention 1982 when it was organized because the census report was released 1980 that showed that Malays were underachieving in education, right? And so there was a big move led by the PAP Malay MPs, and to their credit, they came out with Mendaki. I won't go into the details of that very important day when it was announced. The guest of honor was Lee Kuan Yew. It was at Singapore Conference Hall. I remember going there as a young graduate. But Mendaki was formed in 1982. And interestingly enough, my generation decided to become volunteer tutors. And all of us did not take the salary. You know, we decided we don't need the stipend. We want to give back to the community, right? So I was teaching Sec 4 classes, mathematics. I'm good at maths. Some of my friends were teaching English, basically. So I think Mendaki came at that point with a spirit. AMP also came with that point with a spirit where people feel that something needs to be struggled. That I think is missing now, right? So you need another moment in our community where we come together and says that fire in the belly, needs to drive us. Even I'm not sure whether it's AMP again, whether it's Mendaki again, whether it's another organization. I'm not so sure. I don't want to have too many Malay organizations in the community because we are small, but I think we need to find a way to revive that spirit or sense of struggle for the community.
When you mentioned that, I was thinking, did we miss the boat with Gaza? Wasn't that an opportunity?
It was a great opportunity.
Not to just,
Yes.
we use that as a gateway for this, because those moments, right?
Exactly. I agree with you.
Yeah.
It was a great opportunity if we had one or group of leaders who were able to rally the community to do something meaningful. You're absolutely right.
So maybe we are running out of time also. I'm thinking,
Sure.
I cannot think of a better person to answer this. Do you think as the ultimate thought leader, right, the Minister of Muslim Affairs position, is that still relevant, going to be relevant going forward? Or do you even see that the MMA as the thought leader?
No, I think the MMA position is a very important position. That's my honest. When I held it for 16 years, I saw it as a responsibility, as someone who is supposed to help the community move forward, understand the issues, mobilize the resources, mobilize the community so that we can achieve something, right? I still think it's an important position. I still think that if you give that position to someone who understands what is that level of responsibility, he or she can execute it and execute it well, I think it'll be good for the community. For one, right, in that position, you have the ears of the cabinet.
Right.
You can basically inform PM and the rest what's going on, what needs to be done. Secondly, you have access to government resources.
Right.
It was interesting you mentioned this because I had lunch previously with some of my old colleagues and we were talking about Swara Mashwara. Who remembers Swara Mashwara?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
You really don't remember.
I don't know that.
You invited me to be on it.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I started that independent of the government. I will tell that I was scolded on many occasions, but that's a different matter because I wanted to create this platform to be able to allow the community to give us their feedback, right? And as pointed out by one of my former colleagues, he says, that report is still relevant because there are still those issues that
Yes.
were taken inside that report,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
So that was done by the Minister in charge of Muslim Affairs.
Right.
Yeah.
There's nothing to prevent for the next minister or the current minister to do exactly the same thing. To basically bring together the community and says, this is the problem that we have. Let's see how we can solve it together. I think it can be done.
Yeah, and I think it's a collaborative effort.
It is.
For example, we don't put the whole burden of thinking about issues on one person by virtue of that position, right? I mean, like for example, you take the Mufti, right?
Yeah.
You don't expect the Mufti to be an expert on every single issue.
Not possible.
In fact, he has to consult a fatwa committee,
Yes.
and the fatwa committee also knows its limitations.
Yes.
That on certain issues, on science, for example,
That's right.
may not be their purview, the
Exactly.
expertise, and they have to speak to experts out there.
Yeah.
So I think it's a collective kind of effort.
Exactly.
And the galvanizing has to be done by someone who has access to the resources, who has the power and means to do it. But we can't expect a single person to be
you
the
can't
thought
do it.
leader.
Yeah.
That's why in society now, everyone can play that function and role. And what we need to do is to look at the ideas being proposed and how we can all come together on certain issues that we resonate with and try to find solutions. Ultimately, we may disagree on certain solutions that are being offered, but I think that conversation needs to happen.
That's right.
So if Prof Faisal says, Prof Yaacob, I task you to lead this Suara Musyawarah equivalent, a serious question, right?
I will take it.
Yeah.
I'll take it. I'll
Yeah.
take it. I take it. I'll be more than happy and honored that he's asked me to do so, because I think it's important that you need to have this conversation at a serious level about what's going on in the community. If he give me the resources, the secretariat, I am happy to do a Suara Musyawarah 2.0.
Prof Faisal, the ball is in your court.
I think we also look forward to that. I think it's about
Honestly.
time.
Yeah.
It's about time we
Yeah.
start to
Exactly.
think about these
Honestly,
issues.
We need
Yeah.
that. We need that.
And hopefully this podcast will add a bit to nudge a little bit
I hope so.
on
I
the
hope
community
so.
to think about certain
I hope
issues.
so too.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Prof, for being
Thank
here.
you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you to be here,
and
basically.
Please join us for our next episode.
Thank you for legitimizing our podcast.
That's what he's been using me that way, right?
Okay, just one question, Prof. So after this conversation, right? So are you left, right, or center?
Yeah, we should ask every guest. What do you identify yourself as? Left, right, center?
I'm always a party of moderation, right?
I think for me, it doesn't matter left or right. I think we are all in the moderate middle.
Wow, okay.
Moderate middle.
Moderate. That means there could be left middle or right middle.
No, that could be extreme middle.
Extreme middle,
Extreme left and extreme right.
Okay.
And that's where the red lines that you talked about earlier, right?
Since I'm on a roll, I want to ask
Okay.
Julie another question. Have you heard of
Wow.
the KBE convention?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. The PAP Malay MPs organised, of course, at that time Minister Wan Cik Abdullah Tamugi, a knowledge-based economy convention in the community.
Wow.
I was a secretariat. We ran 4 working groups, basically,
Yeah.
to look at the impact of the knowledge economy on the Malay community.
Yeah. Yes.
And so we had a final presentation at the Masjid Poly. I was the one who did the final report because there were working groups coming together. Then Encik Abdullah opened up the conversation. Then I presented it. Of course, along the way, we were accused of KBE is Kaki Bukit Expressway, Kawin boleh empat. We made fun of.
Right. Okay. I see.
But the worst thing was that, I won't mention, during that presentation, somebody stood up and says, why do you call it KBE and not IBE? Islamic-based economy.
Oh.
And this was done by someone who had I had a lot of respect then, and that day my respect for him lost.
I remember I was quite young at that time. There was QBE also
Exactly.
being proposed. Quran-based
This economy. Yeah.
economy. Yeah.
And-
what is that?
But during that presentation, there was a religious person who stood up and defended us, defended us and says, everything that Dr. Yaacob has presented, there's Islam in it.
Yeah.
And the guy shut up.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this obsession with formalism.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
When we don't really look, what is the real issue at hand?
What's
What's
the
the
real
substance?
Exactly.
Yeah, what's the
Yeah.
substance
What's the
of it?
substance,
Yeah.
basically?
And of course, at that time, it was really a changing
It is.
economic landscape
It is.
globally, right?
Very
But
true.
you mentioning all this it makes me a little bit sad. Where did that go?
Yeah.
Suara Musyawarah was what? 2012,
2013.
2013, yeah,
yeah,
it's around that.
Yeah.
So where did that go? Like all this,
I
the
don't know.
Malay leaders taking up leading these projects. I also don't think it should just be the Malay MPs doing it. That's
That's
very
true.
unhealthy.
That's
But the
true.
Malay
Yeah,
MPs should
Sure.
be.
Yeah. Maybe we need to call you for a second time, Prof, to discuss this.
I think so too.
I'm in
Just for
trouble.
the
Sure.
for the benefit of our listeners, are we able to still find this report online, or how can we access it?
I
there
send
any
you
way?
a copy.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Is it good to share with the public? Then I can do that on the conversation.
Well, on Suara Musyawarah, I have a copy. In fact, I've been told there's a soft copy. I'm trying to get a soft copy. I have the hard copy.
Okay.
The knowledge-based economy, there's a hard copy somewhere with Mendaki. I have it somewhere in my archives. I kept one copy,
Okay.
basically. Yeah.
Great. Okay, that's something that we all can read
Sure.
after this, definitely.
Sure.
So
Sure.
yeah. Thank
But
you very
again,
much.
don't look at the past. As Walid
right,
said and
right.
Imran said, we need to look forward. We need to have another conversation. And I think the minister, the PAP Malay MPs and other MPs have an important role to play to sort of jumpstart this process, because I think there are resources in the community. And I believe there are people who are keen on this process. Young people, young
For
professionals
sure.
that I have met. I
Yes.
think they
Young
are.
people are waiting to be mobilized.
I think so
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think so
I
too.
think the PAP has an opportunity to reset now with the
Yes,
new Malay leadership.
Exactly.
So it should be a proper reset.
It has a proper reset.
All right. Thank you so much,
Thank
Rob.
you very much.
everyone.
Thank you.
Am I in trouble? Oh, no, I'm okay.
We'll see.